Today's video is all about the eras on Amazon. What it was like selling on Amazon in the early days, how it's matured, and most importantly, what it's gonna be like selling on Amazon in 2021 and beyond. Let's go. All right, guys, if this is your first time here, welcome to Heist, the YouTube channel that is primarily dedicated to deep dive Amazon FBA content and selling on Amazon. So I think it's really important to be a student of the Amazon game and primarily a student of history and understanding what has happened in the Amazon FBA ecosystem from the inception of the 3P program all the way up to present day, and then where is the puck going, as Wayne Gretzky would say, moving forward. So I really look at Amazon up to this point in history in terms of private label sellers, in terms of three different eras. And we're going to get into all of those today. Most importantly, the current era and the future era, and what you can really do to position yourself for success as the dynamic changes and as the selling environment changes. So the first Amazon era, I would just call it the hustler early mover advantage era. This is really, I would say, 2017 and beyond, really kind of leading into the early 2013 era when most kind of early stage Amazon sellers started to get into it. But really that 4-year period, I think, can really be described as the purebred entrepreneurs, the purebred hustlers, the people that just went after it with little to no information. So this is people that maybe started selling on eBay and really found success on eBay, and then started to see some things happening when Amazon opened up their 3P program. They're like, hey, I can do this. Let's kind of find a product, let's source it, let's ship some stuff into Amazon and just see what happens. These folks were heavily rewarded based on early mover advantage, being the first people that really stepped into the unknown, took that risk, and just figured it out with little to no data or information. This is kind of the heyday that you could kind of hear described, where you could just throw a product up. If it was somewhat decent, it would thrive, be successful. You could pay for reviews back in this time. So a strategy to get reviews was pretty simple. It was a pay-to-play way to get reviews. A lot of those success strategies were frankly just doing it, being the first to do it, and being comfortable with unknown information and unknown risk. I would say stepping out of 2017, things started to change a little bit. This is the era of what I would like to call the data seller on Amazon. Tools such as Jungle Scout started to emerge. Later, Viral Launch and Helium 10 came into the space kind of as primary software platforms in the space. But some smart folks started to take the BSR or bestseller ranking data, and they started to cultivate information that enabled sellers and armed sellers to predict what the earnings potential would be for potential products. It also started to quantify and provide analytical tools around keywords and SEO and ranking. And so how you could actually not only launch a product and put a product up there, but how could you actually cultivate the metrics that matter in terms of SEO and keyword ranking? And then how could you ultimately determine which products made the most sense in terms of opportunity and financial economics? This is where there was a large influx of both Chinese sellers and Western sellers on the platform as data became available, as training and information became available, and as data decisions became available. So from 2017 to 2019, 2020, this was the era of data emerging into the space and arming decisions for entrepreneurs that wanted to take a leap into private label selling on Amazon. So where are we now? What is the current era? What is the third era of Amazon? In my view, this third era that we're now in and rapidly scaling into is the era of the professional brand and the professional seller. I think what denotes and distinctly separates this era from previous eras is the fact that we've got data now, we've got analytics, we've got all that information that existed in the data era of Amazon. But what has changed is the need to step up our game in terms of building brands. So building brands is a key distinction now, that you can't just have a product that the analytics are good and the economics are good and you had the balls to launch it. Like, that's not enough anymore. You've got to have some other differentiator that sets your offer apart from the thousands of other competing offers, and building brands and thinking thoughtfully about how you build a normal business outside of Amazon. And a lot of those same strategies are now needed on the Amazon platform to succeed. The second thing is really just building and running a business professionally and understanding all of the nuances of operations, sourcing, finance, economics, marketing. All of those things are now part of the core need to have skill set to be effective in this new era. Before, where there's a lot more simplicity in the supply chains and operating structure, you could go find a fairly random factory on Alibaba in most cases. As long as you got some of the stuff right and you understood the analytics, you could send it into FBA, never touch it, never have to worry about it. There is really an unlimited amount of storage capacity if you're willing to pay for it within the Amazon platform. So you could be pretty loose with supply chain. You could be pretty loose with identifying factories. You could even be relatively loose about identifying opportunities and still make it work. That era is gone. And if you think that you're going to be successful using the playbook from the data era of Amazon, it's going to be a really, really rough, bloody battle for you moving forward. So some key things that you need to be able to do moving forward to succeed on Amazon in this new era. Number one, you need to realize what you're up against. You're up against more professional sellers. There's been $5 billion plus pumped into the space alone in the last year for these larger, professionalized, institutional investors that are buying up and scaling Amazon brands in the space. While some of them have a lot of learning to do about how Amazon works, at some point they're going to figure it out here over the next couple of years, and they're going to be good at it. And they're going to have teams, they're going to have investments, they're going to have the working capital to really make a hard push at that. So those are the kind of folks that you're competing against. You're also competing against people that have been in the game for maybe 3, 4, 5, 6 years now and accumulated that experience, accumulated that capital, and they're going to be able to take more lumps than you can if you're not ready for it. So those are the folks that you're up against. Those are the offers that you're competing against. And so you've got to bring your own skill sets and your own strategies to the table so that you can counterbalance those competitive forces that we're going to start to see. I think focusing distinctly on the customer is going to be a really key part of this era, understanding who they are, what their needs are, what they like, what they dislike, where they hang out, what they care about, and really building your brand, your photography, your visuals, your voice, and ultimately your product offerings around those customers is going to be a key part of being successful. Just throwing something up, not really caring about the customer, not thinking about them, is going to be really difficult to compete against these more professional sellers. The second thing that you're going to need to have is a really thoughtful operating platform. And if you think about it, in the historic eras of Amazon, you could kind of have something from China, ship it into FBA, never touch it, never see it, never really have to worry too much other than reordering. And that was really how, when I got into the game, I never had to worry about warehousing. I never had to think too much about things other than just making sure that I had enough stock so that I didn't go out of stock. That was the primary goal. You obviously need to care significantly about not going out of stock now, but there's a lot more complexities. It's a lot harder to secure vessels upstream in Asia, if that's where your factories are, just due to congestion and the increased demand and disruptions that have occurred in the global supply chain. It's a lot more expensive. There's a lot more unknown costs that kind of come into the mix. You absolutely need a warehouse now. That doesn't mean that you need to physically own or operate the warehouse, but you've got to have warehousing partners that make sense from an economic standpoint to stage your inventory and drip feed that inventory into Amazon. That's just, you cannot survive on Amazon without that now. Because there's inventory restrictions at the Amazon level, because they're bursting at the seams and they're wanting to make the most efficient use of their warehouses. There's just no way that you can conceivably ship everything that you want directly into Amazon warehouses anymore, especially if you're launching products, especially if you're growing and scaling. So you've got to understand 3PL warehouses. And you've also got to understand these additional layers and complexities on costs. We've got tariff environments that have been pretty dynamic here over the last 3 or 4 years as we've emerged into this professional era. The cost structures have changed dramatically. I talked about this in a previous video about cost increases, but it used to be, call it $3,000 to ship a container. It's upwards of $12,000 to $15,000 to ship a container now. Pay-per-click costs are going up. It's becoming more expensive pay to play. So with all of these forces coming in, it requires you to do a couple things. One, you've got to understand how to navigate, operate, and set up your business to be able to exist with all these dynamics going on. But going back into the branding, you've got to be able to succeed, in my view, with premium offers in premium price. Because there's a lot of unknowns with costs, because there's a lot of unknowns with ROI and economics and returns, there's things that didn't exist before in terms of costs that do exist now and will exist in the future that we can't necessarily plan around. You've got to have the buffer of being able to sell not on price alone. Does that mean that price doesn't matter? Absolutely not. Price matters, offer matters, but you've got to be able to succeed by not being the lowest cost provider on Amazon anymore. That enables you to have the juicy enough margins to be able to account for some of these unknown costs. And it also enables you to be able to take forces that exist in the competitive marketplace and rise above them beyond just having the lowest price. So probably $1 million or multi-million dollar question. Adam, can you still succeed on Amazon? It's getting kind of scary with all this stuff going on. Does the opportunity still exist? In my view, absolutely. I'm still massively bullish on Amazon. In these different eras, it's just different dynamics at play that you need to be aware of. It doesn't mean that it's harder, easier, riskier, less risky to sell in any one of these eras necessarily. It just means that you got to understand the deck that you're playing in and the game that you're playing. That first era of Amazon, it was frankly about having big balls. Did you have the ability to fly into the unknown, to dump $5, $10, $15, $20,000 into this unknown thing and not knowing how it really works and just see what happens? That was the skill set required in that era. The second era was all about, could you analyze information? Could you analyze data, piece that together to find the opportunities and be opportunistic about those gaps that exist in the marketplace, move fast, put an offer out there, and capitalize on those opportunities. The next era is just really about understanding who you're playing against. It's more professional, it's more well-capitalized players. So you need to understand where you can compete and where you can succeed, whether that be the products or niches that you target, or whether that be the way that you compete on Amazon and how you bring your brand and offers to market. And then it's also just about understanding there's some additional complexities. You've got to put on additional hats when it comes to operations, logistics, economics, and assessing products. And you've got to be able to figure out a way to sell at a premium to be able to adjust and take some of those unknown costs into the equation. But the good news, the riffraff, in my opinion, won't survive any longer on Amazon. Foreign sellers that aren't able to thoughtfully put together a brand and thoughtfully navigate this new environment are going to have a tremendously difficult time competing against this new era of brands that are much more professional, much more well put together, much more well thought out, and much more based around the actual customer. Equally so, you're also competing against some of these larger brands or these larger businesses that frankly can't be as close to the customer, as close to the business, as close to the details as you are. For an aggregator, as an example, operating 100 brands, they have a lot of disadvantages in terms of having a team of hundreds of people. They may not be able to focus on the brand, the customer in the same way that you can, despite the fact that they've got more resources and they can bring in more people to tackle those problems. Also, the valuations, the money, the access to capital, all of these things are improving as this business matures and as this platform matures. And so there's a lot more money to be had. There's a lot more money accessible to scale and build your businesses for the people that understand the formula to success and the people that understand all of these dynamics. There's going to be a lot bigger pool of money, in my view, waiting for those people that are able to figure this out and that are able to succeed. So as these eras change and as we step into this new professional era of Amazon, I don't think that you need to be concerned about it. I think you just need to be aware of the dynamics as they play out. Position yourself, position your skill set, position your business, brand, and products on Amazon such that you're aware of these forces and factors and such that you can capitalize on these forces and factors to find your own success. I'm excited as hell. The space is super fun. It's becoming cooler by the day. The more stuff that happens in this space, the more excited I get. and it's just really cool to see this thing unfold. I'm excited to lock arms with you, share my approaches as we step into these new eras, and share what I think is the playbook and the frameworks to be successful. Rooting for you. Thanks for being here. If this is your first time here, smash the subscribe button. Would love to have you part of the Heist community. I've got some links down below to the resources and tools and arenas that I use, so check those links out. Hit me up in the comments if you got questions. Thanks again for being here. See you next week.